Okay. I'm on Muncie warfare, and so I had to push this back a little bit because of I was gathering some information at last minute. I had a person kind of question our Russian synod, and I wanted to clear the air, I guess. Although it's not my job to clear the air, but I figure since I got a little show, I can tell you guys what I know as a layman. You know. So, well, really, I'm a cantor, but um, I get it's sort of like a reader in the Western Rite rather. So with our Russians, there's a lot of propaganda out there about them, and they did have some issues through the way. So I figured I would start this whole thing by going to the Russian website and reading the autobiography of Metropolitan Seraphim. So I'm going to start there. And then I'll like give a little backstory about why I am sort of doing this right now. So, okay, this is the autobiography of Metropolitan Seraphim. It says, "My life and destiny are not much different from the fate of the post-war generation. I was born on September 18th, 1947, in the very center of Russia, in the Urals, in the village of Ural, Ashinsky district of Chelyabinsk region. One of my ancestors on my mother's side, Nikolai Alexander. Oh man, hold on 1 second, please, guys. I'm sorry. So I've had a bit of a rough day. So it says one of my ancestors on my mother's side was Nikolai Alexandrovich Motovilov, was a cellman with the monk Seraphim of Sarov, and described the life, spiritual exploits of the miracle worker from his letter to the Emperor Nicholas I. It is known that my ancestors, Slavic rulers, participated together with Gostomils in the vocation of Rurik, Sineas, and Trevor to rule the Novograd land, which was described in the tale of bygone years by the chronicler Nestor, and the militia of Minin and Pozharsky. There was also two Motovilovs who participated in the raising of the Romanovs to the all-Russian throne. My grandfather Ivan Grigorovich Motovilov died in 1941 near Leningrad during a division commander. Father Semyon uh, Malafev fought through the entire Greek Patriotic Foreman Company. Okay, so this is a little difficult because some of these names are Russian. I'm so bad with these Russian names, and I don't know. I'm just gonna try to get through it. My parents broke up when I was not even born. I first saw my father in the spring of 1953 in the city of Mais, where my mother and grandmother moved after the death of my mother's brother Nikolai Ivanovich Motovilov. My father was a stranger. Mother was constantly late at work. My grandmother loved me wholeheartedly, and I felt this love with all my skin. And then this is probably a strange translation because we're going from Russian to English here. So it says, grandmother was investigating a root that fed me, gave me spiritual, moral, and just vitality. I couldn't live without her. And my love for my grandmother made me go to church with her, listen to the incomprehensible words of prayers. At first, it says the alien gradually became close. I don't know what that, you know, what that translation is supposed to mean. but intimate in mind. After graduating from school, he entered the Far Eastern Combined Arms Command School. During his studies, he married Galina Ivanova Prokopeva. I don't know. It's terrible. And decided to take her surname. He graduated from the school with honors, then followed officer position, platoon commander, company chief and staff, and training battalion. Combat, this rapid ascent of the most difficult stages of his career, was easy because he loved service, combat training, liked to communicate with people. Then he graduated from the command academy named after M. Prunes. After graduating at the age of 32, he commanded a motorized rifle regiment in the Montanius Karavankan, oh man, from Transcaucasia, in the rank of lieutenant colonel. He got to the Middle East as an advisor to the commander of the Syrian Infantry Brigade, which fought near Beirut. Soon he was appointed chief of staff of the training motorized rifle battalion. 3 months later, combatant. The last place of duty is Lebanon, a military advisor to the commander of the Syrian Infantry Brigade. He was seriously injured. Both legs were badly injured. He lost his right. His left was barely saved. Withstood 14 operations, miraculously remaining alive. He made an inward vow to devote his next life to serving the Lord. After being wounded, he got an apartment in Moscow and decided to leave the army. He says, my wife didn't want to become a mother and we broke up. I was consistently ordained as a deacon, priest, and bishop. In order to give himself to the church ministry, he took monastic tonsure and received the name Raphael, which means the healer of God. The attitude to healing among the ministers of the church is ambiguous. They themselves do not have this gift and suspect everybody of quackery. But you need to judge not by words, but by deeds, the final result. In 2005, at the local council, he's elected the first holy of the true Orthodox Church with the title of Archbishop of Moscow, Metropolitan of all Russia. So that's a little backstory on him. What you're going to find with this type of guy here, yeah. Oh, here we go. This guy. Okay. Autistic rambling. Okay, bro. All right. Anyways, man. So what you're gonna find with this guy here is that he's been slandered, and I found out because I went to the Russian Wikipedia site on Yandex, and I looked there, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And at the bottom of the link, you click the link, and it takes you to a website that was made by the Soviets. Like, there's a Soviet symbol on the damn website. Like, they couldn't even, clear that up. But so I was curious because people had questions, and I went and asked a few people, in the synod, like, what's up with them? And I did get a little, but whatever. Okay, so here's the two specific questions I have for everybody that's asking, not only the validation of our synod. It's like, which bishops would you strike out from their apostolic succession and why? And if the answer is you just don't like them, then that's not a good enough answer, or that you think that you're the only true Orthodox synod in the world, or you think your Ecumenist synod is better, where your elder, said the Virgin Mary told her to go to Rocor, and I guess she changed her mind once Bartholomew threatened him. But anyways, so these guys have often just been propagandized. If you remember that, you approach them with mercy, and even when they are at their worst. Okay, so originally Leonid Prokofiev was a merc soldier, and one day he said he heard God tell him it was time to serve him. So he first went to the Moscow Patriarchate. He realized that was a mistake, so he went to the Seraphimo Grenadiites. This actually is in the wiki when it talks about John Berslavil, who went off the deep end and was part of the Seraphimo Grenadiite synod. Under his vice of Seraphimo, Grenadiers made him a deacon and priest, and something unfortunate happened, and so they made him a bishop. Under these circumstances, the Ukrainian mess started. The MP did a very efficient job of publicly denouncing them as frauds. So this started with, the KGB infiltrated MP, calling them frauds, and weaponized the Viktor Cheklin story. This was what was prompted the Russians to seek out the Ukrainians so they could not be accused of having questionable origins. 2025 irony alert. They have held a council where someone there heard it needs to be verified. They all did mutual Theseus corrective ordinations on each other to ensure that there was no chance their ordinations could be doubted. In 2000, I believe they started acting publicly as a regular synod, and there was jokes, there were rumors, and everybody hated them. So in 2014, even though they were confident that they did was right, they were, this is about the Imaslavi stuff. So I don't know. I think there was a misunderstanding in the translation from the Russian, or maybe there was something going on there, and then they ended up correcting it and saying, okay, so we want to have an Orthodox confession of faith. We've been proven wrong on this, And I would remind people that we have saints that, went through, we have saints that went through major issues in their lives. Like some of them were, I'll give you an example. St. Augustine killed 7 men, right? And then ended up repenting, and we consider him a saint. And who else do we got? We got, somebody like Saint Nikolai of Kiev Caves. He fell into pre-lust, and he was talking to demons, and he thought they were of God, and they would let him do miracles and all types of things. And later on, he repented and became a great saint. So I think that we shouldn't be quick to sort of denounce people right out. We sort of have a modern outlook on these things where, we try to, and this is, I think a lot of it comes from the KGB. So what the KGB did is that they would use the canons of the church as that, because they posed themselves as priests, they would use the canons of the church to try to destroy people. And that's not what the canons are there for. The canons were made for man. Man wasn't made for the canons. And they sort of flip it and reverse it to try to destroy people that sincerely wanted to be part of, God's church. They were Pharisees. And this is what we're seeing is like a lot of Phariseeism going on. And, pointing the finger and saying, well, you're a sinner and you're sick and you're this and everybody else is as well. It's just the world we're in. And if people want to genuinely become Orthodox Christians, why are we turning them away? Why are we making it a hassle? We should be trying to pray for them and help them along that path instead of setting up more roadblocks and trying to make ourselves the only legitimate true Orthodox synod, or in world Orthodoxy, denounce true Orthodox as being schismatic without having any proof, because you know that you're in communion with Ecumenists. So I'll tell you a little bit about this guy in my chat here. So this guy right here, he was a part of the GOCK. And what happened was he went to a GOCK church, right? And during the lockdown stuff or whatever, he was scandalized by the way they handled that. So he said he was going to go to, he said he was going to go to Elder Ephraim's monastery out in Arizona. So because of, something, a canonical violation at best, not a heresy, he goes and flips ship and goes and joins the new calendarists who have been on the new calendar since the 2000s. Their elder had jumped ship and went to, I'm talking about Elder Ephraim, he went over to Rocor. He writes this big long letter that you can find online and says how Rocor isn't schismatic because the EP was calling Rocor schismatic at this time to persecute him. right? So then Bartholomew threatens Elder Ephraim, and Elder Ephraim says, okay, I'm going to come back. He goes back to the EP. Well, when he gets there, he starts establishing all these monasteries. So here's the big story behind this, right? So, Colucci, why don't you listen real close? So I know somebody that went to one of their churches, and they were coming from the Greek Archdiocese, and they were going to go to one of Ephraim's churches, and he had a Methodist baptism. So he asked the monks, can I be baptized over here? And they were like, well, no, we have to accept a Methodist baptism. We have to accept your Methodist baptism. So we're going to have to do it behind your bishop's back. So when you go there, you're going to have to act like you weren't baptized by us. You get what I'm saying? So because they're a part of the World Council of Churches, they have to accept the Methodist and Protestant baptisms. So you want to talk about, whatever issue you're going on, and you want to talk about somebody's, yeah, it's so funny, dude. You're funny because exactly what I'm saying. Why is it that St. Anthony's Monastery accepts Protestant baptisms? Ask yourself that. So anyways, um, in 2000, I believe they started acting publicly. In 2014, even though they were confident what they did was right, they were convinced by some people to write a document affirming their position on true orthodoxy and such, denouncing any claims to the contrary. Then reading this in front of Bishop Cherubim, now Metropolitan Cherubim, who was a representative of Avallona, and stating that as a representative of the Greek Church, they asked him to accept what they had written. When this was done, the argument was that this should have solved any other issues, since this would constitute reception by confession, or such as pointed to the case of St. Meliotius of Antioch, who accepted the ordinations by Arian bishops, but then repudiated the Arians and affirmed orthodoxy. That was the first time they had said anything, because we asked them a bit about it, and they did write stuff up. At this point, asking them kind of annoys them, because the Russians feel they answered this. I mean, who wouldn't? You go and you say, okay, well, I was wrong, and I was ignorant, and I need to, I'm not above correction, and I'm going to go through the whole synod and confess, give an Orthodox confession of faith. And if it was okay for St. Meletius to do this by being ordained by, Arians, why couldn't they do that? And the question is, they can do that. The church's economy allows that. But there's these Pharisaical, satanic, demonic spirit people out here that don't seem to want to accept confession by reception, which is a historical way to accept someone that wants to correct their faith. So at this point, asking them kind of annoys them, because the Russians feel they answered this so many times. This is when people ask. It seems to them that it's an attack on them, because taking into account what they said. And this is a personal bit of history that I'll give you guys, because I think it's important to know. I was baptized at the Abbey of the Holy Name by Bishop Enoch, and during that baptism, there was times where he would place his hands on my head, and I would feel something like I would call it grace. So and I believe that was God letting me know that you know that everything was all good. I guess so. That's the way I would put it. Uh, it was edifying. It was holy. The whole history of the synod can be found online. I'm going to go through some of that tonight. Um, instead of being Pharisees and attempting to use the church's canons to justify rejecting people who have a very clear, true Orthodox confession of faith and ordinations without doing proper research, and deeming them heretics or non-canonical or dubious, because everyone wants their synod to be the only synod on the planet, we need to repent, stop the politics, and stick with the truth, and not even allow the possibility of slander towards our brothers come out of our mouth. Now, so we got to ask ourselves, why are other synods not willing to go in communion with them? Yeah, okay. So look at this. So this guy has a problem with the Raphaelites that regularly donate to the Russian Federation military war effort. It's not true. Okay, so what Father Joseph is saying is they donate food for the soldiers. What monsters? Because at the end of the day, and I'll put this way, is like, St. John of Chrysostom, when he sold everything, he started up soup kitchens. He didn't just say that Christians could go there. Is my mic working? There's a difference between helping soldiers with food and hold on. Okay, I was worried. Yeah. Okay. So, like, I'm going to say that I just want to get this point across since he's here, and I am going to ban him because it's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. That honestly, I'm not going to lie about it. That made me pretty mad. I mean, but I'll tell you what it is. Like a guy like that, he feels slighted because uh, he knows that his own group is off in a major way. When your elder is, speaking to demons and allowing them to have sermons in the church, and you're on the new calendar, which is a deviation of holy tradition, and you're accepting the Protestant baptisms and all this other stuff, because your synod's a part of the, your jurisdiction is a part of the World Council of Churches. You got Bartholomew who's commemorating the Pope, you know. So what can you say? I mean, really. Anyways, enough of the negativity on that. So we're gonna get to the history of. Um, we're gonna talk about the Orthodox Western Rite a little bit, and I thought I would go to this interview that's on NFTU. I'll leave the link here. Well, I'll just read it. It doesn't matter. So it says, as promised, our interview with John LeBlue of New York and New Jersey, who last week authorized the release of an entire English translation of the Pre-Schism Western Rite in the Milan Synod. So this is a little old. So uh, Archdiocese over the internet, being made available in parts on the website link. A work spanning a total of 1,800 pages, a pre-Western Orthodox liturgical text, of which we estimate to be completely online by January, February. What prompted you to release a text? This is what NFTU is asking, you know, Metropolitan John. So he says, once that, frankly, someone gave us a donation so we could buy a scanner into, and there was a call for it on the internet, and 3M had always wanted to make it available freely, but couldn't do it cheaply. Okay, NFTU, tell us a little about the nature of these texts. This is an attempt to provide in the English language the chant that was used in the Great Schism. The monastic office that was described in great detail in the rule of Saint Benedict. I have that book. I was gifted that actually, and it's very spiritually edifying. I recommend it. And following the tradition of the monasteries in England, that there were the result of the foundation of such as Saint Gregory Dialogos and the person of Saint Augustine of Canterbury. In my preface to each of the volumes, it is noted that Saint Gregory wrote to Pope Evagrius of Alexandria and described in detail the things he had sent with St. Augustine to England. NFTU. How did you come to learn of these manuscripts? Around 1975, discussion with then Father John Shaw, who had learned of this through Bishop Danilo of the Serbians, led me to investigate. and obtained microfilm copies of these manuscripts, pre-schism manuscripts that were not destroyed during the English Reformation that were in use at the time of the Great Schism. And so it's from the Portfolium that the texts are based. Yes. NFTU. Why are there so many texts? To cover the large amount of material, all of which has individual melodies to be done throughout the year, together with the book of the Psalms, it represents a huge treasury that existed in the church in the first millennium. There are separate texts and melodies for each of the seasons of the year, each of the saints' days of the year, due to the length of the offices. This takes many books to print these in a manner that is easy to follow. And if you there has been a lot of concern about releasing the books that were previously for sale on the internet. How do you respond to that? There's always a concern that some individuals appropriate this material and use it in the context of Orthodox worship or claim to use this as their own editing, since it is a matter of translation and not of original construction. But there's a lot of material to be made free. I guess the question is why? Why not keep simply selling it? Because the cost of printing is so high that I never print it with a view for seeking profit. So it's more important that those who are Orthodox should have access to these books. I think that shows like kind of his character right here too, is that, you know, for people that are out there that maybe are like, well, you know, you're an illegitimate. There's a lot of love for Orthodoxy here. That's something I experienced at the Abbey of the Holy Name when I stayed with Metropolitan John and Bishop Enoch. I could tell that they loved what they did, and it was a grace-filled experience. And it's kind of sad that, yeah, it's fair to say. It definitely is. It's kind of sad that we have all these people that are claiming to be Orthodox and they're trying to destroy other Orthodox Christians. If you're Orthodox, why are you trying to destroy us? So, give me 1 second. Okay, so we're going to return to this text here. So NFTU is a true Orthodox site. As you know, the Milan Synod is the only true Orthodox synod with the Western Rite now. Would you like to see in terms of reception of these texts among other synods? I would like those who are true Orthodox to recognize that these ancient Western texts fully express both Orthodox teaching and Orthodox spirituality. For example, there is an antiphon in the Offices of Theotokos that beautifully speaks of the comparison of the Holy Theotokos to the burning bush of Sinai, in that it held God but was not consumed by it. Do you have any spiritual words or suggestions for the readers of these texts? There's just my wish that those who use this do so with fervor of heart and desire never to forsake the Orthodox faith of those who used these prayers at the time of the Great Schism. So it's pretty interesting, and so now we're going to get to the main text that I planned on reading, and this is from something that I believe was written by Father Joseph Waite, and it's about 32 pages. And I think, he's got a book called Lux Veritatis, and it's been adapted from that. And it's a history of the autonomous Orthodox Metropolia of Western Europe and the Americas. And let's see. I got a link here to the academia site, so I figure post that in chat if anybody wants to follow along, as I usually do. So there it is. There. Okay, so here we're going to start. A short history of the autonomous Orthodox Metropolia in North and South America and the British Isles. Beginning. The Catholic truth has always been preserved by the Orthodox Catholic Church, whilst Roman Catholicism introduced innovations both in doctrine and discipline into the old common deposit of truth. Quote, no popery was a cry raised in the East 5 centuries before the Reformation propagated it to the West. Quote, no popery, no Protestantism is our cry, and we hope to awake all who seek after truth based on a solid foundation, based on a church which Christ founded and not man. The church has many branches. There's an Eastern Orthodox Catholic Church and there's a Western Orthodox Catholic Church, although now disfigured by Romish errors, but to be purified and restored by God's help. Within the Eastern Church, there's a Greek, a Russian church. Within the restored Orthodox Catholic Church of the West, there would be an Italian, a Gallican, or a Germanic, an Anglican church. Every nationality will have its Catholic Orthodox Church according to its national usage, but based on the common Catholic doctrine and holy canons. Without the full truth, there can be no claim to Catholicity. He who accepts one truth and denies the other, sticks to the one or as being fundamental, and dispenses with the other as being accessory or unimportant or doubtful or even injurious to sound belief, such as one is no Catholic. And I agree with that statement. If this is a valid, if the Western Rite, pre-schism Western Rite, Roman Rite is valid, why shouldn't we use it? And I think the answer to that is pride always. It's always going to be pride, where everybody wants to make Christ their own. And Christ isn't yours. True orthodoxy, nobody owns true orthodoxy. Right? And, those who are sincere and want to be Orthodox Christians, we should pray for them and hope they find their way to true bishops. And I would say that, as far as everything I researched into this synod and the Russian synod and our Greek synod, everything's in order. I've talked to the man, recently, and I'll just say this real quick. It's his job to sort of keep up with all this stuff. And his name's Bishop Gavrilo. I think that's his name. But I talked to him a little bit, and he says he knows the secession. I know the secession of all our international communion of true Orthodox churches. And he says the greatest text of veracity of holy orders is exorcism. Demons do not need faith, they see it. Baptism, priesthood, all of it. We do not think that. We're true Floronites. And he says they would be happy to be in communion with anybody. But, there's a whole lot. Gavrilo. Okay, I got you. Bishop Gavrilo. Gabriel. Oh. Which one is it? But yeah, he seems to say that, they would be happy to be in communion with all these other people, but they just refuse. They find problems in any little thing. And it's because they want to be the only synods in the world. They want to be the only true Orthodox Christians in the world, and they want to use the canons and use everything else, to deem someone invalid and themselves as perfect, I guess. So, anyways, we continue. With these words, in 1866, Joseph Julian Overbeck, a former Roman Catholic priest who converted to Orthodox Church, which until that time had been thought of since as the schism as the Eastern Church, made a unique request in his book, Catholic Orthodoxy and Anglo-Catholicism, that would change the relations between East and West forever. He discussed the creation of a Western Orthodox synod, which would use the ancient ritual of the West and would operate independently. Certainly, his request was realistic. He was quite content to form Western Rite parishes, which would join the Russian synod until such a time that they could have a bishop, and finally a synod of 3 bishops. As Overbeck's resources were limited, and the Roman Mass had remained unchanged since the 16th century, he surmised that for a beginning, the Roman Mass could simply be fully purified of its errors. That's our footnotes here. So it's like Catholic Orthodoxy and Anglo-Catholicism, a word about intercommunion between the English and Orthodox churches. Joseph Julian Overbeck, Tubner, 1866, page 1 and 2. Catholic Orthodox Review 3, number 1 through 6, January to July 1871. As cited in, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, if you guys got You could probably read this. This is the first of the things would be a license to Western priests validity ordained and confirmed to Orthodoxy. To celebrate the liturgy is found in the Missalian Romanon. Without the alleviation afterwards of the institution, of course, the masses of modern saints excluded, to confess the faithful, to administer to the Holy Communion under both kinds, to baptize by triple immersion, to solemnize the sacraments of matrimony, and to dispense the sacrament of the unction of the sick, not to be limited to the hopeless state of the dying. For the celebration of the liturgy, synod would apply an intervention. Liturgy in other churches would be held in vernacular tongue, but the official language used in the documents, councils of the Western Church, and Company would remain Latin. The sacerdotal garments, now partly curtailed and disfigured, to be restored to their primitive Western shape and simplicity. No opera music, but the dignified Gregorian chant. Only icons to be used in church. The Horae Canonical to be purified from Romish stain and to be set in full length by a regular clergy monk. But Ritu Pasquale by the secular clergy. So a lot of these words I'm not going to get. I'm autodidactic. I didn't have a great education. So shoot me or something. Okay, so the Russian church agreed with his assertion and provisionally allowed for a purified Roman Mass to be used. By 1870s, a number of disaffected Roman Catholic clergy, including bishops, had decided to abandon union with Rome altogether and seek communion with one holy Catholic and apostolic church. Many of the quote old Catholics, a group that had formed in protest the false dogma of papal infallibility, looked to Orthodoxy for their protection, and this grouping was mentioned in the patriarchal encyclical of 1895 in response to Pope Leo, our union with Rome as follows. With these and such facts in view, the people of the West, become gradually civilized by a diffusion of letters, began to protest against innovations, and demand, as it was done in the 15th century at the Council of Constance and Basel maybe, the return to the ecclesiastical constitution of the first centuries, to which, by the grace of God, the Orthodox churches throughout the East and the North, which alone now form the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church of Christ, the pillar and ground of truth, remain and will always remain faithful. The same was done in the 17th century by the learned Gallican theologians, in the 18th by the bishops of Germany. And in this present century of science and criticism, the Christian conscience rose up in one body. In the year 1870, in the persons of celebrated clerics and theologians of Germany, on account of the novel dogma and infallibility of popes issued by the Vatican Council, a consequence of which rising is seen in the formation of separate religious communities of the old Catholics, who have disavowed the papacy are quite independent of it. Thus began the formation of the Western Orthodox movement, an expression of the ancient apostolic faith according to the liturgical customs of Western peoples. Meanwhile, the old Catholics at the Reunion Conference of Bonn and Cologne had demonstrated, at least to Overbeck, that in their minds the concept of one church had been clearly defined, thus leading to the branch theory popular among Anglicanism. And in fact, at the Second Bonn Conference, Overbeck had demonstrated the reality of the situation by attempting to make the number of ecumenical councils the first clause of agreement between all church bodies. He also revealed that the meaning that the Anglican clerics had gone to Orthodoxy did not in fact accept the Seventh Ecumenical Council. That's 787. Meanwhile, at the negotiations between Anglicanism, the Old Catholics, and the Orthodox Church failed, increasing numbers of people tried to find a spiritual home in the Eastern Church. Many of these attempts were failures and will not be covered within the scope of this booklet, such as the consecration of Father René Vellate by the Syrian Monophysites, which ended by Vellate's union with Rome. By the early 1900s, Western Orthodoxy had already developed a small foothold in Europe and the United States, as well as thriving Greek, Syrian, and Russian missions had developed under the protection of the Holy Russian Synod. This had to be stopped at all costs by those who stood most at risk. The Church of England tried to destroy Joseph Julian Overbeck in the earliest of an ecumenical overtures, which the Eastern bishops at time naively trusted to be signs of a long-lost, quote, Christian brotherhood. It made clear that their expression wished to never see the foundation of a Western Orthodox Church, but to join, quote, all apostolic churches in communion with them, the logical conclusion of their, quote, branch theory. Meanwhile, their control of Freemasonry internationally, the British throne placed the agent within the hierarchy of the Orthodox Church. That agent's name was Meletius Meltakis, the 33rd degree Freemason, Archbishop of Athens from 1918 to 1920, the creator of the Great Archdiocese of America, and Patriarch of Constantinople, 1921 through 1923. Alexandria, 1926 through 1935. And I'll point this out. Since the synod was created by a Freemason, I think that, you know, whatever they're doing over there is causing a demonic reaction from those that are in the, a part of the laity there. That's what we sort of seen earlier. I think that that was a demonic manifestation. It's interesting, Isaac. Um, so we're going to continue the paper. So we just got into this part with Meletius Montakis. A lot agrees. So in the paper, if anybody's following along, they have a link there. I don't know if the link works or not, but it says as far as the proof of Meletius was numerous monographs of the subject, but most telling is to this day is a member of the Greek Masonic Harmonia Lodge, according to the Grand Lodge of Greece. So there's a website that says that he's a part of it, and I think I used that as a picture. It might have not been him. It might have been Athenagorus or something. Anyways, the incalculable amount of damage Meletius Montekis single-handedly brought into the church, his introduction of the new calendar, as well as his ecumenical reforms, is well known enough that it requires no space here. For our purpose, only one thing is needed for notation here. Meletius single-handedly attempted to change the Orthodox Church view of the validity, unquote, of the Anglican episcopate, recognizing them as a part of the church. The Anglicans in America, their ultimate goal would be stated at their meeting in St. Louis, Missouri, confirming Meletius' proclamation. If all concur, Episcopal bishops can have oversight of Greek parishes. Here within, there is no Greek bishop in the Greek hierarchy, no request, and there can be other interchanges of assistance. Eastern Patriarch recognizes bishops, blah, blah, blah. Okay, not blah, 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 I'm sorry. New York Times, September 17, 1922. Trials of Orthodoxy, Resistance in Greece and Russia. So it says here, the footnotes, the author recommends the following Marcus George P., 1986, the Orthodox Church and the Ecumenical Movement during the period of 1920 to 1969. I have a copy of that. I could probably get that to people. And in fact, at least two national official churches continue to recognize Anglican orders as a result of the attempts. And he's got some links here to the, in fact, at least two national official churches continue to recognize Anglican orders as a result of those attempts. So he's got two links here that prove that there's some, quote, official churches that accept the Anglicans. Meanwhile, the church in Russia was undergoing a far worse trial. The communists had martyred the Tsar of Russia and were intent on turning Russia into an atheist state. Already had they created a revisionist, quote, living church to destroy the official church under the newly restored patriarchate under St. Tikhon of Moscow. The Russian synod was collapsed, and agents of the Soviet state under the aegis of the living church would attempting to destroy the Orthodox mission in America. The revisionist reforms of the living church were not lost on Meletius and the Anglican allies, who chose to recognize the revisionists as the official church of Russia and disposed the patriarch at the Pan-Orthodox Council, and that's in quotes, of 1923. So they had a robber council there. And of course, this Freemason, who's allies with the Anglicans, he chooses to, recognize the revisionists of the Moscow Patriarchate, or I guess. So, well, the Living Church, which was kind of, I think, before the official, establishment of the Moscow Patriarchate. I think that was in the 40s or something. Maybe later. I don't know. No, I'm tripping. Anyways, however, the Russian Church abroad, composed of bishops, were cut off from their dioceses due to the revolution, rejecting these claims and continued to support St. Tikhon. The Living Church managed to take control of the Russian Cathedral of St. Nicholas in New York, and it had remained under control of the official Russian Church since then. Though the Living Church has been officially dissolved in favor of a more conservative state-sponsored Moscow Patriarchate, restored by Stalin in 1943. I wasn't wrong, it wasn't 40. The Church abroad, by contrast, rejected the Moscow Patriarchate, arguing that it was a tool for the militantly atheist regime, which is true, we've been through that. The effects that the schism would have upon Orthodoxy in Western Europe and North America, and the growth of Western Orthodoxy, are subject to the next chapter. In Greece, the situation was significantly different. After the Archbishop Floric of Athens imposed the new papal calendar upon the people, many refused to attend the state churches. In 1924, a miracle confirmed the faith of the people. A cross appeared in the sky that could be seen for many miles during the feast of the exaltation of the cross, Holy Cross. By 1935, 3 bishops had left the state church to form the true Orthodox Church of Greece. By the 1930s, a number of French theologians began to appeal to the Moscow Patriarchate for recognition of their historic ritual, as well as the use of a reconstructed Gallican liturgy. This made perfect sense. The Russian Church had historically placed the churches in the West under their jurisdiction for some time. The missionary work of St. Innocent of Alaska, later Metropolitan of Moscow, and St. Tikhon America, later Patriarch of Russia, had created Western parishes in America by the turn of the 19th century. There were Russian parishes throughout the Americas as well as Europe. Russian theologians showed a keen interest in restoring orthodoxy through the West up until the time of the Revolution and by 1930s. The Russian Church abroad had established even more parishes for immigrant Russians on Western soil. Emerge. How do I say that? Okay, so it says by the 1930s, the Anglicans had already made successful overtures to Constantinople for recognition of the church. Meanwhile, the Westerners, who wanted nothing to do with such a scheme, continued to turn to Russia, although Soviet, and the Russians were happy to oblige. By the 1950s, dozens of Western Rite, mostly in France, and mixed-use parishes had formed under the Moscow Patriarchate in Europe and America. Anglican. Okay, gotcha. All right. Using the Roman ritual, using the Roman ritual as classified Overbeck, the work of Metropolitan Anthony Bloom in England, and Archbishop John Wendland of the Moscow Patriarchate bore substantial fruit in the terms of restoring ancient usages among the parishes in America. Archbishop John of the Patriarchate allowed the use of Rome Serum as well as the Mozarabic ritual in the Western Rite parishes. Metropolitan Anthony Bloom ordained Father Elogius Hessler using the Ambrosian rite of Milan. The reasons for the Soviet Patriarchate taking such a deep interest in Western rite seems at times unclear. Archbishop John Blue, of the Milan Synod's Eastern Archdiocese, speculates that it is in fact, while Archbishop John at the Patriarchate had been doing a good work, it seemed to have been driven not so much by fidelity to the canons, as even the Western Orthodox tradition was at times ignored for what was popular, such as the case of the new calendar, as he was by getting as many parishes under control of the Patriarchate as possible. Whatever the case may be, with the rise of the Second Vatican Council, many more parishes, this time disaffected Roman Catholics, joined the Patriarchate. In the heart of the Roman Church itself, in Italy and Western Europe, in the heyday of Ecumenism, this could not last forever. Vladimir Voss, no friend of the Milan Synod, acknowledges that what transpired with the Metropolitan Anthony Bloom in an open letter on June 2008. So he writes, some Italian parishes in Sardinia came under his omniforeign when he was exarch for Western Europe. However, these former papists, in their zeal for orthodoxy, began to attack the Pope. Then Anthony Bloom, as he told me personally, received a call from the Metropolitan Juvenile of Tula, agent Adamant. Quote, drop your Italian parishes, said Juvenile. Quote, we are having negotiations with the Pope over the unionate question. He has laid it down as a condition of the success of negotiations that you drop these parishes. So he dropped it. Okay, so the Pope is like behind closed doors, like giving demands. All right, this is the Orthodox people. Wow. So in 1970, with the declaration of the Roman Catholics could receive communion in the patriarchal parishes, the Western Rite and mixed usage parishes of the Moscow Patriarchate left to fend for themselves. Having placed outside the communion of the Patriarchate through no fault of their own, the parishes of Europe and America, no longer having a vital link to each other, thought the Patriarchate sought out ways to fix the problem of survival on their own. Okay, so that was from Moss's open letter to Valery says Lukianov. I think that's the same Lukianov we read about in High Treason. It says June 2008. Moss argues that the parishes went to the Cyprianites. The only partially is true in the case of Sardinia, but not all of Italy. There was no official, quote, Cyprianite body until much later. Paganin, Archimandrite Alexis, Pindices, Visnik, Russakago, Christian Skago. Crazy. All right, I'm not going to try it. Messenger of the Russian Christian movement. Paris, New York, Moscow, numbers 173, 1996. And, okay, the Patriarch Synod decision. Okay. The Journal of the Moscow Patriarch, 1983. All right. So, in America, the situation was somewhat different to the intense jurisdictional splitting that occurred in the 1920s and 1930s. Independent bishops were on the rise due to the actions of the Soviet-sponsored quote living church, and members of the Holy Eastern Orthodox Catholic and Apostolic Church of North America. This body would have other effects on the American Orthodoxy through the elevation of Ignatius Nichols, a Western Rite bishop who would proceed to consecrate more bishops with the help of the living church. This fact continued with waves of immigration from other countries. It created even more jurisdictions in America that made the average American convert as confused as where to turn. In 1934, Father William Francis Brothers asked and was granted the freedom to act as an Orthodox Old Catholic bishop by the Soviet Patriarchate, was made a bishop. Like many others during this chaotic period at St. Nicholas Cathedral, by now a wholly disputed New York property among the Russians, Father Raphael Johnson, a writer in the Milan Synod who had studied the life of the Synod's American bishop deck, briefly explained what occurred. That's on the next page. And then go to these footnotes here. It says, despite miserable attempts on the part of the official churches to rehabilitate the memory of the work of Archbishop Efthymios Ophiuch, and and Ignatius Nichols. The fact remains that both men consecrated as bishops, married, requiring the canonical disposition of the office, which has in fact occurred, ended with Nichols consecrating a number of strained individuals to the quote episcopate, such as two Rosicrucians, George Winslow Plummer and Stanislaus de Wittau. From this proud heritage, and there's quotes on heritage, came Bishop Alexander Turner, whose group then became part of the Antiochian Diocese in America, and Turner being accepted as a simple priest, thus necessitating such work and rehabilitation. Okay, so we're on page 12 here. It's a 32-page document. Let's see how long I've been on. So, been on about an hour. Hello, how you doing? Your blessings, please, as always. Yeah. Okay, so we got some people in the chat. I didn't see you guys until now. Yeah, awesome, guys. All right. Okay. One moment. One moment. Okay, so we're going to continue here. It says, the Orthodox Cathedral in New York in 1934 and received into the Russian Orthodox Patriarchate. Williams was then named exarch from the Western Rite under the Patriarchate of Moscow. However, it was through the recently immigrated bishops, Palladios, that Williams left the KGB dominated hierarchy and repented of his association with them, like the fraudulent, quote, autocephaly from the OCA. The Patriarchate at that time, under Alexei I, was using the fact that America, English-speaking Western Rite Orthodox, were under the, quote, care and protection of the Moscow Patriarchate as manipulating global opinion. In fact, the entire purpose of resurrecting the, quote, Patriarchate during World War II was to legitimize the liquidation of dissenting faithful and to place a face upon the assault on Orthodoxy that the Soviet secret police had been engaging in since 1921. By the time the Patriarchate was resurrected by Stalin in 1944, William wanted out, and Palladios wanted to receive him. After William's repentance, he joined the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in exile, which at the time was under Constantinople. And eventually, the Western Rite had its own synod under William himself, under the direction of Palladios. Ultimately, the Ukrainians in America broke with Constantinople under the sword reign of Demetrius of the Phanar. So, what I know about this Demetrius is I think he was a notorious ecumenist, right? I mean, anyways, the Ukrainians in America were scandalized with Fanar's recognition of the Soviet puppet church, as well as its recognition in 1973 of the Roman papacy as a sister church. I guess that answered my question. The fact remains that the Ukrainians for a long time withstood patiently for the sins of the Fanar, and only in 1973, under the Ukrainians now post-Palladios, withdraw their recognition of the Fanar, which played into the hands of the ever-ambitious and aggressive Ecumenism of New York. In actual fact, while the Ukrainians waited until 1973 to make a decision on whether to stay or to leave Constantinople, I'm going to read the footnote here. It says, Johnson, Father Matthew, Raphael, Archbishop Palladios, and the Ukrainian Western Rite, the Orthodox Medievalist website, and it gives the website there, rushjournal.com, August 2008. Okay, so it says the Western parishes were now incorporated as the, quote, synod of the Orthodox bishops of the Western Rite through the assistance of Archbishop Palladios Rudenko, who with Archbishop William elevated of a set of traditional Western Orthodox bishops seats communication with the Constantinople in 1969. It was only shortly thereafter that this church, now isolated, and reduced in size, began delving into the work of studying, translating, and promoting pre-schismatic Western ritual, which finally bore fruit in the early 1990s with the publication of complete service texts of the Serum, use of the Roman Rite. The first complete service books in the West, which far predated the Tridentine ritual and reflected pre-schism Orthodox Western use. In Europe, the situation was grave. By the 1970s, the patriarchal parish of Moscow were so heavily involved in ecumenism, it appeared that there was no hope, as well as the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia's European presence was in many places not nearly as strict as that in other countries. So it was no surprise that when uh, Joa Rocha, a convert priest of the Russian Church abroad under Archbishop Anthony of Geneva, applied to join the Old Calendar Church of Greece. Okay, so I'm reading this footnote here. It was also in the year that Metropolitan and Philaret, a roll corps, both wrote the first sorrowful epistle and officially recognized the consecration of Greek Old Calendar's bishops in the hand of Rocor bishops. Okay, that's great to know. That's cool. So the serum use of the Roman Rite is a collection of local uses dating back in the mid 11th century in the time of the schism between East and West. Okay. So let me read that back. So this Joel Rocha, a convert priest of the Russian Church abroad, under Archbishop Anthony of Geneva, applied to join the Old Calendar Church of Greece under Archbishop Exentios in 1978, and he was received in and baptized as was in common Greek practice. I wanted to read a little quote real quick that I think that would be interesting right now. So, and I'll get right back to the text, but I figure that anybody that's listening might find this interesting. So this is from Father Seraphimos. He says, "We are in full communion with the Greek Old Calendars, Archbishop Exentios in Athens, and with the Catacomb Church in Russia, and with other jurisdictions. Our relations are strained, and some cases broken altogether." This is Father Seraphim Rose, letter 253, 1978. So back at this text, it's saying, Auxentius in 1978. So the same year that Father Seraphim Rose wrote that little thing saying that they were in communion, yeah, this is where we are in this paper. So it says Auxentius in 1978. He was immediately received and baptized as was in common Greek practice. He was then reordained by Archbishop Exentios before being made a bishop of the newly established Diocese of Lisbon on June 18, 1978 by Archbishop Exentios, along with three other bishops of the synod, Maximus of Catalonia, Gerosimos of Thebes, and Callinicos of Lamia. Okay, so we have a picture here if anybody's following along. It's Archbishop Exentios of Athens. This is 1994. Primate of the True Orthodox Church of Greece, 1969 to 1994. Okay, it says the restoration of an Orthodox diocese of Lisbon was itself. I'm not going to start that yet. Hold on. So I'm going to read the footnote real quick. Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. So, um, where are we at? So it says in the footnotes, Vladimir Moss and a number of documents make two claims that we deal with individually. On the one hand, Moss claims that Father Joel Rocha was upset with the fact that no Portuguese diocese was created in Rocor. Certainly, this would not be enough to lead the true Orthodox Church of Greece not only accept in Father Joa, but then suddenly consecrate him bishop of Portugal. The answer be found in the fact that Father Joa, likely recognized, as Moss himself does in other publications, that Archbishop Anthony of Geneva was at the time a rare but very involved Rokor ecumenist. Father Alexander Lebedev pointed out that Archbishop Anthony was an observer of the Second Vatican Council and would do little that would upset the Roman Church. Wow. Okay, so back to the text. It says the restoration of an Orthodox diocese of Lisbon was itself a provocative act of two reasons. As Orthodox had not held to the see of Lisbon, originally erected in the 4th century, since the city was laid waste by the Moors in 716. There were bishops of Lisbon during the Mozarabic period, but it is unclear as to whether they could take possession of the sees. The restoration of the diocese of Lisbon was in 1147, well after the Great Schism. The elevation of the Patriarchate, quote, did not occur until centuries after the Great Schism. Secondly, unlike previous elevations of bishops by the Orthodox in Western Europe, which were more doing the lines of national embassies in Rome or Protestant countries, this was specifically the erection of a parallel Orthodox see in a Roman country which had significant missionary progress. So, here we got a picture of Archbishop Gabriel at Lisbon. This is first post-schism restored Archbishop of Western Orthodoxy, 1978. Thus, for the first time since the Roman Schism of 1054, the parties in question applied Canon CXIX of Carthage, which states, it seemed good that if anyone after the law should convert any place in Catholic unity and retain for it 3 years without opposition, it should be taken away from him afterwards. However, there was during this 3 years a bishop could claim it and was silent. He shall lose the opportunity, but if there was no bishop, no prejudice shall happen to the see, but it shall be lawful when the place had not shall receive a bishop to make the claim within 3 years of that day. Okay. It soon became clear throughout Europe what was happening. A general negative tone began to prevail in the other quarters within the official Orthodox Church. Bishop Anthony of Geneva was angered because what had taken place in, quote, his jurisdiction. It should be noted that Archbishop Anthony of Geneva was only against ecumenism and, quote, by association with the Rocourt in practice, he acted rather differently. The Rocourt's current apologists noted that Anthony of Geneva was the head of a delegation that arrived to observe the Second Vatican Council of the Roman Church. I mean, I've seen stuff out there that said the guy was a KGB agent, and, you know. I mean, I think that was mentioned in this paper too. So he doesn't have a great reputation. In 1984, to assist Archbishop Gabriel in the administration of the rapidly increasing Church of Western Europe, Archbishop Maxentios and Gabriel elevated Bishop Tiago Coimbra. See, these, some of the stuff I just can't read, and I'm sorry, guys, but I'm trying. As vicar for the Portuguese Archdiocese on March 17th, 1984. Again, the Coimbra diocese also has its roots in the Orthodox Western history. Its first bishop, being Lucentius of Coimbra, was present at the First Council of Braga. Okay, so we got a picture of this Bishop Tiago here. It's a pretty cool picture. It says the church was no longer simply encompassing Portugal. The many parishes formerly under the Moscow Patriarchate looking for a safe haven against ecumenism applied to come under the omniphore of the Portuguese bishops. Thus, the archbishop saw the reality of what was happening in Europe and acted on it. Meanwhile, the very creation of the Portuguese diocese, restoring the ancient Orthodox sees, became distasteful to many in the true Orthodox Church of Greece. Realizing the dangerous situation the convert bishops were in, Bishop Oxenios decided to act. Advising the Portuguese bishops, he explained, quote, "If you stay with the Greeks, you would never find peace." I think that's important to note there, what he's telling them. If you stay with the Greeks, you'll never find peace. I don't know. Nothing against the Greeks. Not all of them. The Portuguese bishops acted quickly, and with the blessing of their first hierarch on the 9th and 23rd of September, Old Style, the bishops elevated Bishop Elogius to the see of Milan, Italy, to the see of Milan, Italy, and Bishop Gregorio Baccolini, I think that's how you say it, Baccolini, January 20th, 1997, Old Style, the city of Turin in Italy. The Western Orthodox bishops given autonomy. On September 27, 1984, 69 years after the miracle of the cross in Athens, the Archbishop blessed the Western European Church with a tomos of autonomy. It says, "I, Auxentios, by God's grace, Archbishop of Athens and all Greece, acting within the boundaries of our territory, Western Europe, which I created on June 7, 1978, had decided to give permission to the Metropolia of Portugal, Spain, and Western Europe to govern itself, having as this principal headquarters the God-protected metropolitan city of Lisbon. This metropolia be under the direction of the GOC of Greece." Quote, P.S. Above, the Metropolitan, with his vicar bishops, is obliged to print himself to the hierarchical synod each October. I think he's saying that, and Father Joseph's in the chat, so he could probably confirm this, but I think that later on, people tried to say, well, he did a single consecrate, or something. He did this single-handedly, and that wasn't the case. Like, everybody knew about it, but it wasn't until later they sort of backtracked and said, well, no, well, that's always kind of the case with people that have got an agenda. This is the footnotes here. It says the full name of the Synod, the Autonomous Orthodox Synod of Western Europe and the Americas, itself has a unique origin. According to Archbishop John in New York and New Jersey, the name was decided upon at the Synod in 1990 with the elevation of Bishop Lazar Pahalo, when they entered for a year into communion with the Patriarch Vladimir. He asked them to change it to "and Canada" for less confusion. After they broke communion with the Ukrainians in 1995, they reverted back to the older name. However, the name was used for incorporation, was decided upon in the Synod, and never used in the official document by Archbishop Oxentios. The moniker, quote, Synod of Milan, however, developed through constant reference to Metropolitan Elogius of Milan, although in fact the original first hierarch of the Synod was in Portugal. The popular legend attributes the first name use of his name to a former hieromonk of the Holy Synod. On October 31st, 1987, the Synod consecrated Bishop Vigele to the See of Paris in France, giving an autonomous Western European metropolia 7 bishops by the end of 1987. On February 2nd, 1995, Bishop Basilio Ostia was consecrated to the episcopacy. He remained at the side of the helm of the autonomous synod, eventually elevated to the status of archbishop until 2004. And on the 19th December 1995, Metropolitan Elogius of Milan, Archbishop Vigile of Paris, and Bishop Basilio of Ostia consecrated Archimandrite Vladimiro as titular Bishop of San Giulia di Orta. The story of Bishop Vladimiro is interesting since he retired as a bishop after admitting difficulties in translating the ancient rite of St. Ambrose of Milan into Italian, which was then used once a year, however, he remained a part of the synod. That's interesting. On the 17th February 1997, Metropolitan Evolgios and Bishop Vladimiro consecrated Archimandrite Nectarios and titular Bishop of Cividale dei Friuli departed from the Ecumenical Patriarch a few years later and was received as a bishop. On the 3rd May of 1998, Metropolitan Evolgios and Bishop Marco consecrated Archimandrite Patrice as Bishop of Lisieux in Switzerland. Okay. How's everybody doing? Hear that, brother? Can't believe it. Primates can declare autonomy single-handedly. It was reported the Bureau was the USA at the time, and no one processed at all. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. What's up, Isaac? It's awesome. Okay, so yeah, okay, we're here, America and Canada. In 1997, the two remaining bishops of the synod of the Orthodox bishops of Western Rite, Archbishop John and Hilarion of New York, isolated from Constantinople due to Ecumenism and isolated from Antioch due to the innovations of their quote Western Rite vicariate. I think that's how you said it. Appealed with their parishes naturally to the autonomous synod of the Western Europe and the Americas, and were received in through here we go, this word, chirothesia, at the request of Americans to correct any canonical deficiencies in their elevation to the episcopate. They were then, on February 16, 1997, installed as Archbishop Hilarion of Austin, Senior Hierarch of the Americans, and Archbishop John of New York and New Jersey. By the way, Archbishop John is awesome. He's a really down-to-earth person and great, very welcoming. On 17th May 1998, Metropolitan Evolgios, together with Archbishop Basilio, Hilarion, and John, Metropolitan Auxentios of Aegina, and Bishop Marco consecrated Archimandrite Pavlos Titular, Bishop of Kavkaz, I think that's how you say it, and Vicar Bishop of the Archdiocese of New York and New Jersey. He was then named ruling bishop of Mespeth. Western Orthodoxy's future in modern day. I'll read this footnote first. It says the Antiochian Western Rite continues present day to the present Roman Catholic and Protestant service with minor modifications as quote Orthodox. Unfortunately, this can be found now in the parishes of Rokor that joined with the Moscow Patriarchate. Okay, so they got this Antiochian Western Rite they're doing. So, Western Orthodoxy's future in the modern day. Due to the increased visibility of the Milan Synod as a true Orthodox body, which refrained from communion with innovators, communion with and contacts with other traditionalists increased, while quote liberals in the Synod grew increasingly vexed with the rise of traditional Orthodox behavior in Europe and America, consequently making deals with certain World Orthodox quarters to come under their protection. The past few years have thus seen the original synods now split into two parts, one small and submissive to the Moscow Patriarchate, destroying her mission of free Orthodox traditionalist parishes in the Western lands, and others establishing and strengthening her communion while preserving her missionary spirit. In 2010, Metropolitan Angelios of Avallones, Boeotia, who had entered into communion with the Metropolitan Evolgios of Milan the previous year, established a synod at the True Orthodox Church of the patristic calendar. The position of the synod was in some ways similar to that of the TOC jurisdictions, with the exception that it refrained from communion with others until a pan-Orthodox council of the true Orthodox in Greece could be called, restoring all previous bonds of communion between the jurisdictional splintered true Orthodox. It was immediately made clear that the Synod of Milan and the Greeks viewed each as equals. I think this is a good opportunity, since we're talking about this, to maybe talk about the divisions amongst true Orthodox. And I found something that kind of vindicates us in a way, I think. So this is from the Orthodox Word, and it was published in 1976, and it's written by Father Seraphim Rose, and he says, the increasing realization in recent years of the basic oneness of the cause of true Orthodoxy throughout the world, whether in the Catacomb Church Russia, the Old Calendars Greece, or the Russian Church outside of Russia, has led to some to think in terms of a, quote, united front of confessing churches to oppose the ecumenical movement which has taken possession of, quote, official orthodoxy. However, under present conditions, this will hardly come to pass. In any case, this is a, quote, political view of the situation which sees the significance of the mission of true orthodoxy in too external a manner. The full dimensions of the true Orthodox protest against, quote, ecumenical orthodoxy, against the neutralized, lukewarm orthodoxy of apostasy, have yet to be revealed above all in Russia. But it cannot be that the witness of so many martyrs and confessors and champions of true orthodoxy in the 20th century will have been in vain. May God preserve his zealots in the royal path of true orthodoxy, faithful to him and to his holy church until the end of the age. It's from the Orthodox Word, Volume 12, Number 5, 70, September through October 1976, pages 143 through 149. And this is something else here about the divisions. The new calendars and ecumenists themselves are hardly free from internal divisions. The Ukrainian church is fragmented into three major and minor groups. The Church of Macedonia has declared itself autocephalous and is shunned by the other patriarchates. The churches of Bulgaria and Montenegro have each spawned independent, quote, counter churches. The Patriarchate of Jerusalem has two patriarchs who do not recognize each other, and a bewildering array of Vacrante groups exists, uh, claiming apostolic succession from each one or another of the official churches. And in addition, the official patriarchates are often very hostile to one another, and the Patriarchate of Constantinople in particular has the tendency to carve out and support uncanonical autonomous churches within the historic territory of the other patriarchates, especially that of Moscow. Um, and this is the last thing I'll say on the divisions, because I think it's interesting. The existence of many competing jurisdictions in the TOC is not a bothersome issue. It's because, first of all, jurisdiction is a relative idea. It is an institution part of this world, an institution primary of convenience. It is not the faith, nor is it reducible to the faith. It is an organization that often takes itself to the very font of the grace and truth. The multitude of the, true Orthodox jurisdictions throughout the world are one in faith. This cannot be denied. The divisions amongst true Orthodox are based largely on personal squabbles and the desire for income and recognition. Nevertheless, the multitude of jurisdictions of bishops is providential. It provides a highly decentralized model of church life that can survive the world of Antichrist, which we currently live. A single powerful organization is easy to corrupt. A multitude of small organizations is almost impossible to corrupt. Therefore, in my opinion, all true Orthodox jurisdictions share an identical mission, identical faith, and therefore all grace-filled of salvation. It is the faith of community that gives sustenance to the bishops, not the other way around. A bad bishop within a healthy community is far preferable to an unhealthy community with saints as bishops. Okay, so I think that was a good point to make, sort of. Um, Absolutely. Um, I think it's a bad idea. I mean, I'll tell you why. Um, uh, I'll quote one of our saints for you, so it's not just me saying something. You know. Um, It says the Latins are not only schismatics, but they are heretics. We do not separate from them for any other reason other than the fact that they are heretics. This is precisely why we must not unite with them unless they dismiss the addition from the creed, the filioque, and confess the creed as we do. That's St. Mark of Ephesus. And he also says, I am convinced that the further I depart from him, the patriarchate, and from those like him, the Latin minded, the closer I do draw near to God and all the faithful and the Holy Fathers. And the more I am separated from them, by so much more am I united to the truth and the Holy Fathers. That's St. Mark of Ephesus. And this is the last quote I'll read from him. He says, the Latinizers have dishonored and corrupted the church by making her mingle with those putrid members that have been cut off from her for many years, and are subject to countless anathemas. And through communion with them, they have besmirched the spotless bride of Christ. That's St. Mark of Ephesus, Epistle to Hieronymus Theophanes. So, communion is impossible, between us and the Catholics, but we would love to have you, join Orthodoxy. That's true. We would love for them to convert to Orthodoxy. Yeah, correct. Thank you, Father. Yeah, thanks, guys. Okay, so we're gonna continue on. Um, Body which reframed communion with the innovators, communion with contact with the traditionalists increased, while the liberals and the synod grew increasingly vexed with the rise of traditional Orthodox behavior in Europe and America, consequently making deals with certain Orthodox quarters to come under their protection. Okay, I read that. So, um, destroying her mission of free Orthodox traditionalist parishes and Western lands, the other step strengthened her communion while preserving her missionary spirit. In 2010, Metropolitan Agalios of Avallanos and Boeotia, who had entered into communion with the Metropolitan of Olgios and Milan the previous year, established the synod. Yeah, I read that too. Sorry. Pan-Orthodox Council, the True Orthodox would be called, restoring all previous bonds of communion with the jurisdictional splendor True Orthodox. It was immediately made clear that the Synod of Milan and the Greek Synod viewed each other as equals. The new Greek Synod took an interest in the developments of Romania and Bulgaria and immediately assisted in the establishment of a functional True Orthodox Synod in Bulgaria, further due to the request of a Serafimo Granade catacomb bishop in Bukovina, which is split between Romania and Ukraine. Full communion was established with his metropolitanate as well. Further communion was established with a number of Orthodox parishes in Latin America, and the Patristic Synod received in Metropolitan Chrysostomos of Ecuador and his parishes in 2010. In February 2011, discussions were held between the True Orthodox Synod in Greece and the True Orthodox Church of Russia under Metropolitan Raphael Prokopiev, with approximately 80 parishes in Russia. They described the occurrence as follows. How admirable your gifts are, our holy all mother, our all holy mother Theotokos, we could rightfully cry towards her, for the lavish grace she granted us during this time period. All of us, the ecclesiastical world, already know our holy synod was established by the will of God. Obviously, since we had made everything possible in our powers to find out a viable ecclesiastical course. Since then, we proceed very carefully, and after much prayer, having the tactic of the quote open door. The Apostle Paul used to do. As a result, we are first of all in the pleasant position to announce that the hierarchs consisting of our Holy Synod are already seven, after joining of two famous for their spiritual work Caucasian hierarchs Metropolitan Abhazia and Skoditsky Iotham, and future B Metropolitan the Tbilisi and Karlinski Christopher. But from there will be an extended article in the near future. A big, wide open, and very clear door has been opened for us, and with the blessing of our Lord, his mighty hand led us in an historical ecclesiastical communion. Here is the chronicle of this unique event. In the beginning of February, our Metropolitan, together with his vicar, Bishop Porphyrios of Martyropolis, visited Moscow, especially for this matter, because since the middle of January we had a very immediate and clear proposition for the ecclesiastical communion, coming from the legendary Catacomb Church, nowadays genuine Orthodox Church of Russia, under the omniforeign of his sanctity Metropolitan Raphael. Being to Russia, we were proposed to discuss face to face this issue. In the first place, the arch-secretary of this holy synod, the archimandrite Daniel, visited us to our hotel and gave to us all the documents about the Russian synod. Being satisfied with what he read, our metropolitan agreed to proceed furthermore. So we continued our discourse at the directors of foreign affairs, Metropolitan Sergi's residence. His Eminence proposed we arrange a celebration. After a short discussion, we ended up like this. 1. We would study carefully the documents. 2. Then we would arrange a celebration in Athens for establishing of communion. 3. Finally, we would arrange a major co-celebration in Moscow for the confirmation of the communion. The very next day, we started applying this schedule, and first of all, a few words for the Russian Church itself. This very church is coming from the historic Church of Catacombs. The Catacomb Church was founded by two Metropolitans, Joseph of Petrograd and Kirill Smirnov. With the written permission of the Saint Patriarch Tikhon, Joseph and Kirill were executed in 1937. They were recently canonized as saints by the Russian Patriarchate. Uh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were. Joseph Petrograd was. Or is it talking about. Which. Oh, I get. I wonder which. Never mind. The other churches from abroad helped by consecrating bishops for them. Such churches were the Ukrainian Autocephalous Church, Patriarchate of Georgia, even the Rokor, Metropolitan Vitali. Nowadays, bishops come from this very line, having canonical succession. As a proof, the Russian state recognized the canonicity of this particular synod by registering it, which is a unique act of recognition. Okay, so finding out all this, these, finding all these, our Metropolitan was pleased enough to give his blessing for the first co-celebration. Thus, on 26th of March, we, the present Holy Synod, under the leadership of our Father, went to International Hellenic Airport to welcome the Russian delegation consisting of Metropolitan of Mavruni and Exarch in the Balkans, Sergios, Metropolitan of Kiev and Galatia and Exarch of Ukraine, Andrei, Bishop of Tver and Kashini, Mark, Bishop of Volkolam, Andrei, Archimandrite Daniel Mukatanov, Chief Secretary of the Holy Russian Synod, and Subdeacon Oleg and Subdeacon Dmitry. Having welcomed them, we went to our synodical monastery of Theogenitoris, where our clergy welcomed also the hierarchs of a monastic tropeza followed. The next day, Sunday of the Cross of the Veneration, the majestic event of the impressive celebration occurred. Celebration rather. During the matins, the ritual of signing the documents agreement for communion took place. Metropolitan Sergius on behalf of the Russian Church and Bishop Porphyry on behalf of the Greek Church signed the documents. After his beatitude, our president, Metropolitan Angelos, blessed the commission by reading a special prayer. The Synod in Europe and the Synod in Americas. I want to take one quick break, real quick, guys. So, absolutely, truly. Yep. No, sir. You're unions, unfortunately. And if you check my community post, I would look at a post I made on the union. So it's by St. Paisius Velikovsky, and he's talking to a uniate priest on the filioque. And he gives a pretty astounding answer. And I would read that if I were you. And maybe think over, I don't think it's a coincidence that you're here. I think that God might be directing you to a very specific message, and I think that might be the message. Um, Absolutely. I don't know. I'm just gonna keep on. I'm gonna keep going with this. Whatever. I'm not gonna stop. I usually take a break at some point, but um, we're almost we're close to being done with this papers. Um, the Synod in Europe and the Synod in Americas. Meanwhile, in December of 2010, Milan made a proposal to grant the American diocese autonomy. The proposal was accepted and plans were devised to compose the Tomos granting the same. On February 26, 2011, Archbishop John of New York was given a Tomos Discreto number 582 for the Diocese of America of the Synod of Milan, granting them full autonomy as a metropolitan and extended jurisdiction over Americas and the British Isles. We Evolgios, by the grace of God, Metropolitan of Aquileia and Bishop of Milan, first hierarch of the Holy Synod, acting within the boundaries of our territory of Western Europe and the Americas, and with the agreement of our brother hierarchs of the Holy Synod, do bear by here grant permission to the Orthodox Metropolitan Church in North and South America and the British Isles to self-govern as their principal headquarters, the God-protected metropolitan city of New York. The Metropolitan of New York shall perform his holy duty to the churches, communities, and parishes which be directed to him and his brother hierarchs of the metropolis. This metropolis will be under the primacy of the Orthodox Metropolitan Church of Milan and Aquileia. The further nominate and bless the present ruling of Archbishop of New York, the Archbishop John, the first hierarch of the autonomous Orthodox Metropolitan Church of North and South America, and the British Isles, and the Synod of Milan and Aquileia, and bequeath to him the rank of the Metropolitan appellation of his beatitude. This has been done in our Holy Synod for the Western Europe, the day of celebration of St. Evolgius, Pope and Patriarch, 2613, 2011, Evolgius the first hierarch of the Holy Synod, and Archbishop of Milan and Metropolius of Aquileia, Primate, H.B. Metropolitan John Honorius, Bishop of Lincoln. With the Tomos in hand, the new metropolitan began to dual task of strengthening the bonds of communion between Milan's regional sister churches in Greece, Russia, and Bulgaria, as well as defining certain requirements for new clergy entering into the synod, such as the formal rejection of ecumenism, modernism, and Sergianism. Although Metropolitan John had made his position clear concerning refusal to commune with world orthodoxy for a number of years, the American diocese had long had a large quiet dispute between the traditionalists and the modernists, looking for an old calendar synod to gain the appearance of legitimacy. The silent battle only rearing its head publicly occasionally on the internet. The synod eventually learned the extent of the organization of the modernists. Approximately half a dozen clergy were working to try to bring the synod under the jurisdiction of the Moscow Patriarchate without the knowledge of the bishop, who appeared to be a random group of modernists in the Metropolia, were in fact an organized body. In some cases, secretly commemorating Metropolitan Hilarion and the Moscow Patriarchate, in one case for a couple of years. In response to the continual discovery of the members of this hidden group of Moscow Patriarchate loyalists, a provisional document was introduced for discussion and ratification rejecting ecumenism, Sergianism, modernism, the new calendar, and made publicly known to the Metropolia's website. Immediately isolated clergy who secretly had embraced Ecumenism, searching in the name of, quote, friendship with the world Orthodoxy, began to protest and plan to leave, assuming that the document would require their signature. In fact, the document only applied to new entrants. Milan responds. In response to the joyful announcement of communion, Milan's chancery office, end quote, also known as Archbishop Bundius of Lecco, made immediate statement that it rejected communion with any branch of the true Orthodox Church in Russia, and further that the Milan was also negotiated for its entrance into the Moscow Patriarchate's Moldovan branch. Further, on certain social networking sites, Archbishop Umbon highlighted television interviews between himself and reporters in Romania discussing the need for recognition of homosexuality in Orthodoxy. Wow. uh, what? So immediately the Greek church under Metropolitan Angelos uh, and the Bulgarian church under Metropolitan Damaskinos protested Milan's sudden announcement of negotiations. Many Americans also immediately protested the negotiations, to which in response Milan announced that they were now an autonomous Metropolia. He had nothing further to do with him, removing the bishops from the Milan Synod's website. In response, the American Metropolia responded by acknowledging the breaking of union and discussing further responses within the sister churches. Metropolitan John immediately confirmed with the heads of the sister churches that the Milan's actions did not involve the American Metropolia, and the communion with them would remain, as well as the new Metropolitan went to Greece to confirm his retained communion with them and strengthen their bonds in the face of the Milan Synod's sudden entrance into dialogue with the Moscow Patriarchate. In typical Soviet fashion, okay, I'm gonna read this footnote. It says this video originally broadcast on Romanian TV when this Archbishop Abundias was apparently a priest of the Romanian Patriarchate and has since been removed from the user's favorite list. We cannot at present locate it. Okay. So, in typical Soviet fashion, the Moscow Patriarchate stated they were largely uninvolved in negotiations, often have a reception of taking place through the quote independent or Moscow Patriarchate bishops. Further, Metropolitan Volgios, according to phone conversations with Greek and American bishops, indicated that he had no control over these actions and nothing to do with them. Further, he stated he had never had any intention of breaking communion with anyone. By June, discussions began over how to ultimately deal with Milan, the European Synod's sudden move to be received into the Soviet Patriarchate. On June 25th, July 8, 2011, lacking any options in the face of the brazen support with the Synod in Italy, now showed to the surgeness Moscow Patriarchate, the true Orthodox Church at the patristic calendar officially ended her communion with the Milan Synod. The American Metropolitan's position, being the remaining part of the Milan Synod had not bent the knee to bow, is that the American Metropolitan can act temporarily in the stead of Milan as Western primate, and ultimately work towards the establishment of the locum tenens, and eventually hierarchy for the Western Europe, restoring the work that began with the establishment of the native Western European hierarchy 33 years ago. Though reduced in size, the free Milanese are now at liberty to assist in the preservation and growth of the church throughout the world. Footnote says here, although the word negotiations were public on the Milan's website, the only person receiving in clergy from Milan Synod appears to be Metropolitan Hilarion of Rokor. True ancient Western Orthodox Christianity today, and an invitation to the true church of Jesus Christ. During these days, when many people can be confused by claims of, quote, Western Orthodoxy and, quote, Western Rite Orthodoxy, all Orthodox Christians have assurance and sure comfort of the Holy Fathers as our guides. Between the, quote, independent groups and the, quote, canonical Western Rite Orthodox who scandalize people with their innovations and strange heretical rituals, many, it seems, almost impossible to become a Western Orthodox Christian in our day and age. Sometimes it seems wiser to simply go to an Eastern church and relearn Christianity all over again. We have a sure guide to the great saint of the Russian church, St. John of Shanghai, who said, "Never, never, never let anyone tell you that in order to be Orthodox you must be Eastern." The West was Orthodox for 1,000 years, and her venerable liturgy is far older than any of her heresies. But this does not answer the question. Which Western Orthodox comprise the true church? Do not despair. In the midst of confusion and over what is the true church of the West, one only need to look at the church fathers to see the answer. For St. Vincent of Lorraine clarified it best and for all in the Communitorium, Communitorium, rather. Sorry. Moreover, the Catholic Church itself, all possible care must be taken that we hold the faith which has been believed everywhere and always by all. For that is truly the strictest sense called Catholic, which, as the name itself and the reason of the thing declared, comprehends all universally. This rule we shall observe if we follow universality and equity and consent. We should follow universality if we confess that one faith to be true, which the whole church throughout the world confesses. Antiquity, if we are in no wise apart from those interpretations, what it is manifest, were notoriously held by our holy ancestors and fathers consent in like manner. If antiquity itself we adhere to the consentient definitions and determinations of all, or at least of almost all priests and doctors. Thus, having tradition as our sure guide, we involve all those in the West who seek the true church to return to her and to rejoice in the truth. 1 Corinthians 13 and 6. We involve all Westerners return to their ancestral home in the traditions that nourished their forefathers before the Western Schism, to receive the body of Christ, the medicine of mortality, who, as our true shepherd, for the love of sheep, went to face the death, which was threatening the sheep, that being himself captured by might by the new device, led captive the devil, who is the author of death, being conquered, might conquer, being slain, might punish, and by dying might open to the sheep a way of conquering death. St. Gregory Christologos, Christologius. And that way, O reader, is open to you today. For more information, it says about true Western Orthodox churches in North America, call or write the Abbey of the Holy Name. It gives all that information there on the back of the paper. And I got one more thing before I go to sort of lay out, and then I'm going to go. Let's see. Okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about. So, some will say, well, St. Philarite didn't accept the Western Rite or something like that. Well, I would say this. St. Philarite, while he may have opposed the restored Gallican Rite, that's fine. Our bishop, one of our bishops, has said that he's ambivalent, but it's a bit about it since it's very fragmentary compared to our Western Orthodox Roman Rite that's performed at the Abbey of the Holy Name. He says, my understanding is that the Roe Court decision in 1977 states that the Western Rite as it exists comes after the schism and can't be used for that reason. And he agrees that if a Western Rite is based on post-schism material, it shouldn't be used. So there's no disagreement as far as I know. He doesn't say, talking about St. Philarite, pre-schism Western Rite is condemned. And additionally, I would pose the use of Orthodox Western Rite in any Roe Court or Greek context. It simply is not meant for them, and they're more than likely just to cause issues with it. So he doesn't see any issue with that. And in the words of our Vladika John, he said, "We need to have Western Rite to humble the Greeks." So I'm going to end on that. I'm Unseen Warfare. I appreciate you guys. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. But oh my God. Well, I'll answer that quickly. The whole Immaculate Conception thing, if I'm not mistaken, there was, it's doctrines don't develop into something different from the time of the apostles, and you know, doctrines are defined, but they don't develop, and that wasn't taught in the beginning, and it didn't come into play until much later on when supposedly a girl seen a vision in a cave or something like that. Simply, I don't think we buy it. I don't believe we think that is true, and it was likely pre-less. So I'm gonna end on that note. Thank everybody for stopping by. I'm Unseen Warfare, and I hope that answers some questions, and I appreciate it. Saint Irenaeus said, I mean, did he say that? I highly doubt both of this. You know, you can say that, but I'm going to end this stream. Thank you guys.